Good morning, everyone. Right. Let me try and share my screen. Okay. Does this work? Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean, the Impact Director of Social Innovation Movement, coincidentally called SIM as well. And yeah, today I would like to share you a little bit about impact planning and measurement. First, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share some insights. And just very quickly, impact planning, it's about mapping the change that you're trying to achieve. And measurement is a monitoring process to help you assess the project impact and etc. So very quickly, let me just touch on what we do here at SIM. Primarily, we do three things. First, we bridge effective collaborations. Second, we advance social innovation through research impact. And finally, we co-create a shared body of knowledge. So what we do is primarily we are an impact and collaborative NGO. So if you are ever interested in collaborating with us, do give us a shot. So impact planning. So before we go into impact planning, we need to figure out what is impact first. So impact is very basically the purpose of your action. You know, why do you do what you do? What is your final objective? So to understand impact or to understand your final goals and what gets you up in the morning is to really understand, assess, and plan for the fundamental meaning behind why you do what you do. So what we do here is we normally have three categories of questions to help frame the impact that you're trying to achieve, the change that you're trying to achieve. So first, what we have are framing questions. Framing questions are the underlying actions that you do. So what are the activities you do? Who is your impact planning information for? And how will you verify the accuracy? Moving on, you have accounting questions, which is the inherent changes you're trying to address, which are what changed, who changed, and also how do you measure the change? And also there is a point of, is this what stakeholders want? Because there is always a discrepancy sometimes between what organizations want and what stakeholders want, and it's always important to address that as you plan your impact. And finally, we have some implication questions, which are also your conclusive questions or reflective questions. So this is the questions you ask to assess the efficiency of your project or the impact of your project. So have you met your objectives? Are they the right objectives? And should you change your approach towards addressing them? So once you have these questions in mind, it helps you understand how your actions lead to your impact. So this is also the point where you should involve your stakeholders, as mentioned. Always involve them. You may think that this is what people need, but they might be thinking of something else, and it's always about bridging that gap that really drives impact forward. So with this in mind, yeah, so you understand how your actions lead to your change. So basically what has been happening nowadays is that people do a certain action, they don't know what goes through the black box of in the middle, which are the question marks, and then you have your goal. So normally people just do something and they hope to achieve a Hail Mary and achieve their results. This is, but through an impact journey or a logic train, you are actually mapping out the black box we did and try and figure out what was put in and what was put out, and it's mapped out in a systematic and logical manner. So what we do here at SIM as well is we are a proponent of a theory of change model, which is basically, as mentioned, you map out the input, activity, output, outcome, impact. So you have a logical assessment of what happened at the start towards what happened at the end. So you start off with your resources or your input, which are things like money, labor, finance, etc. And then that gives you the opportunity to carry out the actions that you need, which are your activities. And from there, you have immediate tangible results. And and with that in mind, you then have your long-term implications or your outcomes. And through a collective like through just consistent outcomes, through long-term implications, you result in an overall systemic change, which is your impact. So that is how the logic train works for our theory of change. And you can see it in an example such as this one here. So this was an organization that did a community outreach project where they went into a community and they had two objectives in mind. First is give an overall understanding of plastic and sustainability. And the other one is about upskilling certain demographies on reusing and reutilizing plastic. So for this organization, their input is awareness. Modules, really, primarily a lot of modules, a lot of time and a lot of effort, and then that translates into specific activities that they do, which are workshops, and also infrastructure building for specific machineries. And then that translates to direct outputs, which are number of people that came, number of waste that was recycled, and etc. And then finally, you have your outcomes, which are your long-term indirect changes that you want to see from the community at hand, which are, for in this case, will be understanding of plastic, improve income generation. And through this outcome, it then translates into the final goal or change that the organization wants to see, which is the development of a sustainable community. So that was impact planning. And then now we go into measurement. So you have planned your impact. Why do you measure it? The reason for this is simple. There are three main reasons. First is tangibility. So you want to have a reflective insight on what you did and a realistic understanding of what happened and what changed. Integrity is about accountability and transparency. So to be able to share with whoever asks, could it be your stakeholders, your funders, etc. You can tell them that these are the things that we did and these are the changes that happened. And finally, there's accuracy of data. So direct, tangible information that is communicated. So impact measurement is really about using data to facilitate decision making. So through measurement, you can really make the right decisions at every point in time. The measurement period would be before, during, and after. So these are the 3 time periods where you can take action as well. So before, it's about benchmarking. It's about understanding what was the situation at hand at that point, and then what was the improvements that that we brought about as an organization. During is about immediacy assessment. So it's about understanding whether to pivot or whether to stay, and how to allocate resources in the most effective manner during the project. And finally, you have the program effectiveness assessment, the final assessment, a reflection, and a comprehensive understanding of what happened, and also maybe what can be improved or what can stay for the next iteration of the same project, etc. So then that brings us to implications. So why measure? As mentioned, we touched on assessment. Assessment is about understanding the overall social outcome. So what was the good thing that happened? What was the bad thing that happened? What was the intended thing that happened? And what was the unintended thing that happened? So you have a very holistic understanding of what you did and what was the results of that. Help utilize resources correctly. So where to put your resources, what activities to carry out. Maybe from your assessment and measurement, you realize that, hey, certain activities are not as effective as driving the change that we need, and maybe we should put resources in some other activities. Assess collaborative synergies, understanding your partners. Are these the right partners for both parties? Are they better partners to explore, or should we stay with the ones? And finally, establishing common ground between organization wants and stakeholder needs. Once again, it's about understanding everyone's perspective and understanding and bridging that gap. It's hard to attain what organizations want without first addressing what the stakeholders need, even though what the organizations want may be beneficial to the stakeholders at hand. So always communicate and always understand the players within the field. And then from this assessment, you can take one of 4 strategic actions, which is either to pivot, to improve, to stay, or to quit. So once again, measurement is primarily about decision making. But measurement is also about validation. It's about evidencing your actions. It's about showing people that, hey, this is what we did, and it did good. Yeah. So validation is about raising profiles, raising your company's or organization's profile, scaling up. If you want to scale, you need evidence of what you did before, funding support, and evidence for policy development if you are involved in policy. This is an example of how measurement can be done. So I just took a small section of what we had before. And for input activities and output, it's quite straightforward because it's immediately tangible and immediately recordable. So for input activity, for example, you're looking at number of hours, number of modules, number of workshops. Very easy to track, very easy to measure. Output is similarly so. It's just the number of people that came, number of products that was produced, immediately tangible, immediately measurable. The tricky bit comes at outcome because you're looking at indirect long-term shifts, long-term changes. And sometimes there are direct approximations you can use. So for example, if we look at income generation, it's about overall income generation improvement. So number and percentage, relatively straightforward, relatively impactful. But sometimes it's about asking indirect questions like number of individuals reporting a higher standard of living. So that is not a directly measurable outcome. It's about inference more than more than observation in some cases. And finally, there's impact, which you don't normally measure impact. What you do is you infer based on the various outcomes that you did over a certain period of time and see whether it has achieved the final goal that you are approaching, which in this case is the development of a sustainable community. Tools of measurement. So these are the various tools that normally are used for measurement. So we have surveys, interviews, notes, observations, and also data and research. So we've done planning and we've done measurement. So, and then next we're moving on to communicating. So you've done your work, you've assessed it, and it's time to tell people what you did. And this is normally how we go about doing it. First, you share an analysis of your outcomes, of your breakdown. So analysis is important, communicating what happened and why it happened. Photos and verbatims are great testimonies to show that, well, at the very least, the project was carried out, but also about the effectiveness of the projects that you did. Data is always impressive, always useful to show that what happened and what was the implications of this data and what was the changes. Graphs and videos are very cool. They share information in a more interesting way, more impactful way, and also more tangible way. So it's small tidbits of information to really communicate what you have done and why you have done so. Okay, so we've kind of finished the core insights that I wanted to share, but we're gonna just touch on something else just a little bit before we end the session, and it's about SROI, social return on investment. So this is an additional level of rigor in measurement. It's about providing a financial approximate to the overall impact and comparing it to your initial investment cost. So that is about efficiency, It's about understanding how effective was your program. It has a very simple formula, but there's a lot of nuances behind it into finding the right approximates for your specific outcomes, because those are not very direct. Those are social outcomes, and finding numerical numbers, financial numbers for social changes has always been a tricky thing, and that's why there's a extensive level of rigor when it comes to social return on investment. It's something that we do here at SIM. And if you're ever interested, just send us a text. That's all from me today. Thank you for your time. If you ever want to collaborate, we're here. And I hope it has been insightful and interesting. And yeah, have a great day.